Okay, this video is just meant to explain assignment number 2, which is the design thinking project. And there won't be any new lectures posted this week in anticipation of you working on the project, so hopefully that'll give you some time to think about what you're going to do and start to kind of check off the items that are going to be involved in the assignment. Now, if you wanted to, use any of the equipment that's here on campus at Northridge in the A&E CAD department, you're more than welcome to do that. So we have scanners, we have, software that you could potentially use, and, you're more than welcome to any of that kind of stuff. But here's what's going to be due. So the main thing you want to do first is make sure you review all of the Lecture 12 material. That was talking about the design process and specifically the part about design thinking. So there are those 5 steps associated with design thinking. You can either look through the lecture slides. The most helpful thing would be to watch that part of the video that has to do with design thinking, and again, that's posted in Lecture 12, and you can look at the design thinking video. Now the other thing that you want to do is, that's kind of the first thing, so you also want to look at the Rothko Chapel. So the Rothko Chapel is a project in Houston, Texas, and let's take a look at that. Okay, I've included a link to the Rothko Chapel website that you can read, and it has some information about when it was built and why it was built and kind of how long it's been around. But I want to show a couple of photos because photography is actually not allowed typically on the inside of the chapel. So these are some good shots of what it looks like. But what we're looking at is not necessarily the form or shape of the building, but it's kind of the idea of the building. And if you look at it from the exterior, this is the exterior, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on the outside, but the point of this is kind of the experience of the chapel. And when we talk about it being a chapel, it's not a chapel in that it's a religious sanctuary, but it is kind of like a thinking space and a thinking sanctuary. Sometimes people go here to meditate, or it's almost like an art gallery that is meant just kind of for a quiet reflection. And so when you're looking at this, we would refer to this as a case study, like was discussed in Lecture 12. And so we're looking at this just to kind of see what the building type does, what it is. It's meant to be kind of like a single space that is used for introspection and for someone to have just kind of a quiet experience and a quiet moment. And the paintings are by the artist Mark Rothko, so that's why we call it the Rothko Chapel. But they're quite somber in terms of their, colors and their texture and light and all of those kinds of things. And so the light inside of the room, inside the chapel, is indirect and kind of provides some glowing ambient light on the paintings, but sometimes people go to look at the paintings themselves. Sometimes people go just to experience the space. But we look at this because the idea for this project is that you are going to create your own space, and you're going to select an object to put in the space as kind of an inspiration piece, not unlike this Rothko Chapel. So here there are, Mark Rothko paintings that line the room, and you're going to select some object. It could be something that has personal significance to you. It could be something that you own, something that's, a family heirloom, or it could be something that's an imagined object that you don't own, but that it's something that you want to kind of construct your design idea around. Okay, so when we're starting to look at the requirements of the assignment, basically what you're going to do is go through the design thinking steps or the process of design thinking to create this project. So the main thing I want you to keep in mind is don't be intimidated by the project itself. And the idea is that you're doing this without any prior design or architectural experience. So I am not grading on, beautiful drawings or ability to design or anything like that. It's really about the process. So I'm just grading you going through the process, and that's it. So anyone can do this. I don't want you to be intimidated. And, sometimes I get from people, well, I can't draw. Well, if you can, put a pencil to paper, you can draw, because all you're trying to do is just make shapes and form and, sketchy notes just to try and get your ideas from your mind down on the paper. So that's why we want to use the design thinking steps, because it really breaks it down into bite-sized steps where you can say, okay, well, I've never designed anything before. I'm going to use these steps to kind of go through the process, and at the end, hopefully you'll be surprised that you actually, came up with something. So the first step in the process is to empathize. And the main key phrase there is learn about the audience for whom you are designing. Now, you are the audience, so hopefully you know yourself pretty well. But in this process, what you want to do is just start kind of thinking about what it is that you like to do, what it is that you like to spend time thinking about, and what the object could potentially be that you would want to use as your kind of inspiration piece in your project. So in that Rothko Chapel, the object is the paintings, but in yours it could be anything. It could be, just anything that talks about, things that you like or things that you find comforting or whatever it is. So that's up to you. So in this step, all you're going to have is just some notes. So you're just kind of taking notes. You're just like, you're not even designing anything yet. This is kind of like the programming phase of the project. You're just trying to figure out what it is that you like so that you can get an idea of what the project is going to be. And so, when you're looking at what it is that you're eventually going to turn in this step, you're just going to take notes and you're just going to turn in your notes. So here you could type them, you could handwrite them, it doesn't matter to me. As long as you have a way of kind of capturing them, either by, taking a picture of them with your phone or scanning them or something, or copying them into Word or whatever it is, then you could do that. And we're talking about how to capture these images and turn them in. You could, maybe you create like a Word or PowerPoint file here at ACC or at home, and then you could just capture images with your phone and then paste them into that file, and you could just go through the steps, or you could, type things. I don't expect most of this stuff to be typewritten, especially where you're taking notes by hand or sketching things. If you want to type some things, you can. When you go to Blackboard, which we'll take a look at in a second, you could copy and paste text into that text box. So let's look at that. Okay, on the last assignment, the number one question I got was, where do I turn this in? Right? That's a great question, because this is an online class. You've got to list stuff that you're kind of making and writing. Where do you turn this in? So when you go to Blackboard and you go to our class site, you'll see, if you go to the main page, you could go to the home page. Let's see. You go to Introduction to Architecture, and then you go to Weekly Lecture Units, which is where you're getting all your other lecture information, and go down to Lecture 13. So there isn't a Lecture 13 in terms of like you know, actual lecture stuff where there will be a quiz associated with it, you're going to go back to this lecture date, lecture 13, click on that, and then where it says assignment number 2, design thinking project, there are kind of two things. When you want to get the information on the assignment, you're going to click right there and it'll take you to the PDF that has all of the requirements for the assignment. And then when you want to actually turn it in, you're going to go back here and you're going to click on Design Thinking Project. Just click right on that link, and then this is where you submit it. So if you want to write some text actually in this page, you can do that where it says Write Submission. You can just physically type stuff in. So you could say like step 1, here's what I did in step 1. Or you could copy and paste text in. You could do that. Now there will be some things that you need to submit photographs of, but you could also do that here. Like if you typed something, you could then go in and you could attach some attachments. So whenever you want to attach a file, you would just go down here to attach file below the text box and click on Browse My Computer, and then you can navigate to wherever you want to upload them, pick them, and just hit OK or Submit. Now there are, if you want to write me anything here, you could put add comments, but most of the stuff you could probably write in here, or you don't have to write anything in here. You could also put everything like in a Word document or a PDF or something, and then when you want to submit it, you just click on Browse My Computer, just pick the file, and then upload the file, and then if you have everything for the assignment in that file, then that would be fine also. And then when you're completely done and you're ready to go, then you're just going to hit Submit. Now you can also work on this periodically. Like you could write some text and then maybe you just spend a little bit of time on it each day. Then you can hit Save Draft and it won't submit it as a graded thing. And then whenever you're completely ready to turn in the assignment, then you would hit Submit right here. Okay, so back to the steps of the assignment for design thinking. The second thing that you're going to do is define. That's the kind of second part of the assignment and the second design thinking step. So it says construct a point of view that's based on user needs and insights. So since you're the audience or the client, here you're going to think about what spaces you'd like to have as part of your kind of contemplation area or meditation space, and then you're going to describe the object that's going to be included in your project. And then the last thing for this step is you want to have just kind of like a short, concise written statement about what your parti is. Now if you remember from lecture 12, your parti is the concept for your whole project. So that's not listing the object, but based on things that you like or what your kind of point of inspiration is, you might say my concept is and then you talk about what it is that's going to drive the design of your project. And so each of these are going to be individual. So the list of spaces, it could be one space, it could be a few spaces, but I really don't want you to go over 4 spaces because I don't want this to be like this massive, like bulky project. This is meant to be a pretty simple design. So if you want to have like an indoor space, an outdoor space, if you want to have an entry or whatever it is, then you can have that, but don't go over 4 total spaces. And then the concept or the parti, maybe the object inspires some part of your concept. And you say like, well, based on the object I picked, then here's my concept. Or it could be completely separate, but it's going to be up to you to come up with whatever your concept is. Okay, the third step is going to be to ideate. This just means you're going to brainstorm. So in this step, get a piece of paper, you could get a sketchbook or a notebook, a bunch of pieces of paper, but literally just get pencil and paper and just start, you know, writing or sketching or doodling anything that comes to mind in terms of what the design of this project could be. And you could even set a timer and just say, okay, I'm just going to dump out everything that's in my mind about this for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then, don't worry about drawing quality, anything like that. You're not being graded on that. You're just being graded on the process that you did it, right? And the more you can kind of churn out in this phase, the more potential ideas you're going to have in order to create a design. So you want to show at least 3 kind of potential designs. It could be like all different shapes or all different forms or sizes or colors or whatever it is, but you want to have at least 3 kind of different not concepts, but 3 different schemes that you would potentially have. And just kind of go for it. I don't want you to feel limited by what you think the end result is. The whole point of this phase is there's no bad idea. So just kind of brainstorm and get it all out on paper. Now what you're going to turn in there is just a capture of your sketches and notes for this phase. The other thing that you're going to turn in for this phase is a bubble diagram. So that's probably going to come after you do all this, the brainstorming and sketches and notes. You'll figure out whatever spaces you're going to have. The bubble diagram is just on a separate piece of paper, make a circle for each space that you're going to have, and write the name of the space in there, and then if it's connected to another space, draw a line between them. They don't have to be connected, but if you want there to be like a really strong connection, you can do a bold line, or if there's a minor connection, just do kind of a short line. The next phase is prototyping. You're going to pick one of those ideas that you came up with in the ideation phase, and you're going to build it. So when I say build it, you're going to make a quick, or just a rough study model. I mean, not necessarily quick, but a rough study model. I'm not grading on the quality of your model. I mean, I've had people make things out of, an old pizza box and some tape, right? So it's just, you're just showing form so that somebody could look at it and say, oh, this is the 3D version of your idea. And then you need at least 2 drawings for the prototype, so that shows the same thing as your study model. Now, you could pick any kind of drawing that you want to show. It could be a sketch of a plan, perspective, elevation. It could even be a photo collage, whatever you want to show, but you need at least 2 drawings to turn in, and they should match your study model, right? So if you show a model of something and you want to do a plan, then it's going to be kind of like a cut through that model. And that can be in any format. If you want to do it all by hand for the drawings, that's fine. If you want to do some computerized stuff, that's fine. But the study model, I want it to be physical, right? Even if you do some drawing in the computer, I want the study model to be physical. So it can be, paper and drafting dots or pins or tape or cardboard or whatever it is, but I want you to kind of make it up by hand. And then the last phase is going to be to test it. And that usually means return to your original user group to test your ideas for feedback. Since it's you, then you're just going to write a written statement, maybe just like a few sentences about what you think worked, what you think didn't, how well it adheres to your concept or your original partee, and then really giving yourself feedback for what you would do different next time, because the design thinking process is kind of making these steps and doing them over and over. And so that's the stuff that you're going to turn in. And we looked at where that is on Blackboard. So they can be in the files that you upload to Blackboard. It can be a Word file, PowerPoint, it could be a PDF. If you do photos, you could paste it into one of those formats. But if you have a question about it, just shoot me an email, and hopefully, you can kind of go through the steps, and just check off each one of the things as you go through.